Hello everyone, and this is the last technical walkthrough for month 3 of 4 in Capstone. My name is Desiree Champlin and I hope you enjoy our video of Beyond the Jump by Firefox Games. The first part of my section of the video will take a look back at a previous technical walkthrough. Each JIRA issue discussed in detail. The first JIRA issue we discussed was player feedback, a crucial aspect of game development. This feedback would later play a key role in my video, highlighting how it influenced adjustments and changes in my game area. Some players pointed out issues such as the absence of audio or the audio being too loud, emphasizing the need for better sound balance. Others mentioned they weren't expecting or looking for audio controls in the main menu, showcasing varying user expectations. Each piece of feedback was unique and valuable, reinforcing the importance of player input in creating a polished and enjoyable gaming experience. The next JIRA issue we'll focus on is the Central Hub, which serves as the player's first point of interaction with the game's world and sets the tone for their experience. This issue is broken into several subtasks, each aimed at enhancing the hub's design and functionality. The first subtask involves recreating the hub itself, ensuring the layout, visual elements, and design details align with the game's overall aesthetic and narrative. This is the area where players begin their journey, so it needs to feel both welcoming and engaging. The second subtask focuses on recreating the Wizard's Tower, a central landmark within the hub. This structure isn't just decorative, it plays a significant role in guiding players, establishing lore, and acting as a focal point for exploration and gameplay. Next, we introduce players to a few of the obstacles they'll encounter later in the game. These introductory challenges are designed to teach players key mechanics in a low-pressure environment, preparing them for more advanced levels while keeping them engaged. Finally, we'll populate the hub with collectibles. These items will serve multiple purposes, from rewarding exploration to providing a sense of progression. Placing these strategically within the hub will encourage players to interact with the environment and learn its layout. Together, these subtasks ensure the Central Hub is not only a functional starting point but also an engaging space that invites players to immerse themselves in the game's world. As we re-enter the game, we take a moment to observe our surroundings, giving the area a quick look to appreciate the work that has gone into creating the environment. From there, we head down the stairs, moving with purpose toward the open door that invites us into the next part of the world. Here, we can see the culmination of effort, from environmental design to mechanics and details that bring the zone to life. Once we've taken in the zone, we navigate to the pause menu, using it as a bridge to return to JIRA. By revisiting JIRA, we prepare to dive into another critical aspect of development, demonstrating the iterative nature of game creation and the importance of balancing in-game exploration with development planning. In JIRA, we transition from the recreation of the Central Hub to a closer focus on the Wizard's Tower. This tower plays a pivotal role in the game, serving as the player's spawn point and acting as the first major structure they encounter after the introductory cutscene. Once we re-enter the game, we begin by examining the Wizard's Tower in detail. Starting from the outside, we observe its architecture, design, and how it integrates with the surrounding environment, ensuring it feels both grand and cohesive. From there, we step inside, taking note of the layout, textures, and other details that make it feel alive and functional as the player's initial base of operations. The interior design reflects its importance, housing key elements that connect the player to the storyline. After thoroughly exploring the tower, we navigate back to the pause menu. Here, we revisit the previous JIRA issue, reviewing progress and ensuring all elements align with the intended objectives. This process reinforces the iterative nature of game development, where constant refinement and attention to detail are essential to delivering a polished and engaging experience. The next JIRA issue we'll focus on is the floating crystal above the Wizard's Tower, a key visual and functional element in the game. These floating crystals serve as markers of progress, with each level's crystal ascending to its place above the tower once the corresponding level or zone is completed. Back in the game, we step outside once more to showcase the floating crystals in detail. The crystals are designed to hover to symbolize the player's progress through the game. After highlighting the floating crystals and appreciating their role in the game's progression system, we return to the pause menu. Here, we prepare to dive into the next JIRA issue, maintaining a steady workflow and ensuring every element of the game is thoroughly polished and integrated. As we re-enter JIRA, our focus shifts to the transition level, an important area connecting the hub to the various zones within the game. These transition zones act as gateways, designed to seamlessly immerse the player as they move between the hub and the different levels. Once back in the game, I run through each transition zone, showcasing how the design and environmental details create a smooth and engaging experience. The lighting, atmosphere, and layout are carefully crafted to maintain immersion and prepare the player for the challenges ahead in the new zones. After exploring and highlighting the transition zones, we return to JIRA to discuss the next issue, the introduction of obstacles scattered throughout the hub. This sets the stage for refining the player's experience as they learn essential mechanics in a familiar environment. The obstacles scattered throughout the hub serve as an introduction to the challenges players will encounter in the game's 3 zones. These obstacles are designed to familiarize players with the mechanics they'll need to master to progress and ultimately complete the game. They range from rolling logs that test timing and agility, to falling platforms that demand quick decision-making, and even growing mushrooms that add a dynamic twist to traversal. Once back in the game, I explore and showcase the variety of obstacles placed around the hub. Each one is carefully designed to provide a glimpse of the challenges ahead, helping players build confidence while maintaining an engaging and interactive environment. This thoughtful introduction ensures a smooth learning curve as players prepare to tackle the zones. After showcasing the different obstacles in the hub, we return to JIRA to address the next issue, populating the hub zone. This task focuses on enhancing the hub's interactivity and visual appeal by adding key elements that engage the player. The first step is to populate the hub with collectible crystals, strategically placed to encourage exploration and reward curiosity. These crystals not only add a layer of gameplay but also contribute to the hub's overall aesthetic. Next, we adjust the landscape, refining its layout to ensure it feels cohesive and inviting while supporting smooth navigation. Finally, we focus on adjusting existing obstacles or adding new ones to maintain a balanced level of challenge and variety. Once these elements are implemented, the hub becomes a vibrant, dynamic space that sets the tone for the player's journey, all within the aesthetics of the game. We explore the hub zone to showcase all of the elements discussed with Jira issues to hopefully create a game that is worth playing time after time. The aesthetic speaks for what type of game this is meant to be and the type of genre the game is. The landscape is of various heights to help create a sense of immersion into the game's landscape. As I end this segment of the video, we go from the pause menu to the main menu. We then transition into the second part of my segment of the video. This part is where we will discuss the updates, the menu systems, and what has been completed since the first part of my segment of the video. The main menu has been updated to include the controls page. The main menu also has the start, settings, credits, and the quit button. The main menu has been set to black for now. The second sub-menu we will look at will be the credits page. This is where all of the team members' names are located that worked on this Capstone project. This page also contains our team's name, which is Firefox Games. We then go back to the main menu to go to the sub-menu, the controls page. On the page 8, the controls and information about the objective of the game as well as the keys to control the player's movement. This is critical information for the player. We now head back to the main menu to select the Settings Pages button in order to showcase the different buttons and slider function located on the page. We once again head back to the main menu. Once we hit start, you will notice how the cutscene has changed. You can click on the cutscene to bypass it. We will now showcase the pause menu and how it contains the resume button, settings button, control button, and the quit button. We select the controls to go over the controls once more before going back into the pause menu. This is followed by going into the settings page. You can control the audio and set the game to your preferences. Next we go back into the pause menu and select resume button in order to showcase the wizard's tower from the inside. We then head down the stairs, and as we enter the doorway, a menu pops up showcasing once again the controls. As we continue out, it disappears and we can continue to showcase the wizard's tower. As you notice, some things about the scenery has changed and the pebbles on the ground has changed color as well. The trees have gotten bigger and the aesthetic seems to be brighter. Some of the current feedback we received was they could not see the pebbles, they got confused which way to go, and the collectible crystal amount was overwhelming. We also took out the floating crystals above the tower. The work I did on the hub helped out tremendously. The landscape for this sprint has been updated, some of the height has been changed, I've edited the transition zones as well. I've added a few more trees and more bushes to the landscape. You can see that the amount of crystals have changed and the color has been slightly altered. I wanted the landscape to feel more immersive and engaging for the player. I wanted the landscape to encourage more exploration and to test the different obstacles within the game's 4 different zones, including the hub, which introduces some of the obstacles. I have also edited the transition zones to be more open, colored appropriately to showcase the transition from one area to the next, and added some of the collectible crystals to help guide the player to the different zones. As you can see, a lot of work has gone into this to make it really stand out from other games and make it a lot of fun for players. There had been a lot of changes to the scenery, landscape, and the overall feel of the game. I wanted the hub to be aesthetically pleasing to the player's eyes and adhere to the design pillars I have set for the game's overall design. Each of the transition zone has also been colored or marked to showcase the next zone to help create a sense of what's to come by a visual stimulate to the player. I do hope you liked on how the progress of the hub and transition zones have evolved over the course of Capstone. We go into the pause menu now to get ready to head over to Jira to discuss all of the issues that were worked on in this sprint/segment of development of the game. The first Jira issue in this segment will be the Finalize Hub. This is where we finalize all aspects of the hub, including the collect crystals, the tower layout, transition area, and the landscape. The completion criteria for this is none of the transition areas or zones are consistent, landscape is fully detailed, and the tower is completed. I have done 2 days and 5 hours of work, including all of the subtasks that are connected to this issue. There are 4 subtasks that belongs to the main issue. The next issue we go into is the Finalize Collect Crystals. These crystals are the ones that are scattered throughout the game and is used to heal the player if the player collects the amount to heal. The crystals are methodically placed within the game. The completion criteria for this is crystals are placed that encourages exploration, crystals are visually distinct, and they are fairly placed and not overly challenging to access. The next issue we look at is the Finalized Tower Layout. I wanted to make sure the layout and aesthetics are within the design pillars of the game. The tower should facilitate player progression and maintain performance standards. The completion criteria for this is in floors, pathway, and layout are fully functional, support smooth player movement, and seamless integrate into the game's gameplay and aesthetics. I have spent 3 hours working on this issue alone. Now we move on to the next Jira issue. The next Jira issue is the Finalize the Transition Zone. The design connects the hub area to the different zones in the game, visually representing the theme of both the hub and the connected zone. This is to ensure proper asset placement, smooth navigation, and smooth player movement. The completion criteria are visually cohesive, clear and smooth pathway, and no graphical issues. The last issue we will focus on is the Finalize EVT Hub Landscape. This includes refining the terrain, ensuring proper placement of assets, and optimizing the layout for smooth player navigation. The completion criteria for this are terrain sculpting is completed, lighting and environmental effects are finalized and meets the design requirements. I spent 4 hours on this Jira issue in order to create an inspiring landscape for the player to explore. That was my portion of the video and the hard work I did for the team, and I do hope you enjoyed. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Eddie Velasquez, and today I'm going to be going through the forest zone that I created. Here we have the depot build right here. I have already extracted it into my playtest folder, so I'm going to go ahead and open that here. And the forest zone is the zone that is pointed directly to the player as soon as you walk in. There's our controls. So we'll go ahead and walk right on into the forest. And that completes the entirety of the forest zone. Thank you. Hi, I'm Eddie Velasquez, and today I'm going to be walking through the tasks that I accomplished in Jira for Firefox Games Beyond the Jump. I currently have the project already open, and so the first one that we're going to look at right now is we have the interaction bug. I'll pull that task up real fast. So the interaction bug right here was, if it'll click, what would happen is when you would interact with the object, the prompt to interact with it would still be visible. So here you can see I interact, I walk back up, and it's still showing me that I can interact with it, which is not what we want. Come back into the build, I interact, and that prompt is now gone, and it does not show back up until the platform goes away. We also have the grow platform sound. So the sound would overlap and it could be heard throughout the level. Here we have it where the player interacts, and then upon leaving the area and going further away, let's speed this along. Right here, there's the sound of it going away, and there's it disappearing completely, even though we're really far away from it. You come back here, we resume. Once this actually disappears, if I scurry away, we will not hear the sound any longer. Give it just a couple of seconds. And there it goes. It's now changing, it's disappearing, and we couldn't hear anything. The next thing we have is the actual camera obstacle collisions. So here, this one's from the volcano area, but it's the principle still applies. Is some of the objects in the world were causing the camera to make this jarring motion for the player. Same thing with the obstacles right here. Cause that player to have a bit of a jarring shift in their camera focus when they were coming around the obstacles. Whoops. And so if we pull the build back up, come in here, if we look at that same exact obstacle, we'll note that the camera no longer causes that jarring shift, and the environment itself doesn't do it either, like we had previously. This applies in the volcano and stuff as well. Oops. So the next one we have is the forest hammer sound bug. This one right here, if we pull up the little video real quick as we walk in, I'll be quiet so you can hear it. So there it was. It got super loud, super laggy. And if I run through it now real quick, get to the end of it. Just a quick little jaunt. Oh, huh. Not that great at platforming. A little bit of a different path from the demo vid. So here we have those swinging hammers again, and you'll notice that the sound is much better now. Let's go ahead and click back. Get back over here. So the next one that we've got here with like the playtest feedback and adjustments, there was a lot of different things that we had. We had some feedback here talking about interactables, need a bigger area that you can use them. For that, I did change the actual size of the interact sphere trace that was being used. It's actually 3 times the size that it was, allowing the player to be able to easier or have an easier time interacting with those. We also had feedback with the gaps and the spacings with the obstacles. Part of that was me adjusting the camera as well with its collision. So if we look in here, again with the collision and whatnot, to help out with the obstacles and such, the interact trace is much larger giving the player easier time to get with the spores. We also have larger spores for them to interact with instead of the smaller ones that were present in previous iterations. We'll go ahead and skip down here real quick. So intro adjustments. So here are some screenshots. This is what the intro looked like before. And it was here again. We have the intro, sort of what it looked like before. The problem with this was where it's at right now. The player actually has to interact with the mechanic to get into the zone. We had issues with players not really knowing what to do with the spores. And then here, instead of it being such an aggressive throw into, hey, use the spores and jump through this spinning obstacle, it's now a much more tame and simplified, hey, hop over this way. This is what these are used for. And we have this over here. This was simplified as well to make it less demanding on the player. Now, when it comes to this practice area, this kind of second area that we're in right now, it initially started off, it was very open. There was a lot more spores that made their way up. There was this little jump obstacle that had, crystals all around it. But the problem with that is that it really didn't bring anything to the game. There's just a lot of dead space around here. This served zero purpose at all. Same thing with all these obstacles that were along the side. And so with that, what we ended up working with was just really kind of simplifying the whole space. There's a lot less to it, the bushes kind of say, hey, there's nothing really here, you can't go into them or anything. And they really just kind of push you now towards here so you can make your way up. This has been simplified from I think it was 6 or 7 platforms to now it's just 4 to make your way up to get up here. Oh, excuse me. And then this area as well was just sort of put together, much more simplified than it was before. There's less crystals along the pathway as well. Along it as well, we also decided, it was from the feedback, a lot of the gaps and jumps were frustrating. And we wanted to give the player the ability to, let me go quick here. Not sure why it's doing that. So we'll come up in here and along this way. I think it has to do with the alt tabbing. But once we're in here, we have this alternate path that the player can actually take in this little practice area. A little bit more intense with having the platform and balance. But there's now this little reprieve zone that the player has. And there's the much more simplified path if it's hey, these logs are a little too demanding. They can hop over here. It's way simpler, much easier, and they go in. I'll hop off of this. And back into the tasks. With the mastery, this area actually saw the largest of the adjustments. If we look down here, so the initial mastery zone area looked like this. And then we'll go hop over to that section right now. So maybe cutting it close with this grow platform. Aha. And so from what you can see now, the change with it, there's less crystals along the way, but also these spores are much more visible and much larger for the player to actually interact with. They were causing a lot of problems. Players were having difficulty interacting with them and getting to them in a timely fashion. We also have the little hidden areas. So this is the original hidden area. I'll go up to where it's at now, or what it is now. And so accessing it is still the same, but instead of having to go back into that space, it's just the 4 little crystals right there. And then there's another area way down towards the end that was taken out as a hidden zone. And so here, yeah, these spores are much easier to interact with. Over here was a big change as well. It used to just be a simple sort of like jump through this spike, and then you just hop over that way. There was also more of the interact platforms like that over here, but did away with those in favor of these moving platforms to kind of help bring everything in line together. Um, you know, as the volcano zone also has moving platforms, it has these falling platforms. And it also simplified the pathing for the players, so they have a little bit more choice. You can take the more complicated one up here, or you can just kind of make your way through here a little bit quicker, a little bit smoother, less risk involved that way. Here as well was another big change. I've got another screenshot for that as well. And if we come, let's see, where's it at? There it is. Looking at the wrong thing. So with this one as well, the original ending section here was much more vague. There was the pathing over here that you could take for the crystals, but there was also this kind of down here. And it really, there wasn't any big difference between the two of them other than really how you interacted to get down. This way to the left right here was more difficult, but it wasn't anything super special. Definitely think that's an alt tab issue. And so here now it's just a simplified little jump, make our way through, and hop, and make our way all the way to the edge. Jumps are a little demanding. The platforms, you know, if you fall, you're going straight into the drink. You're gonna go back to the checkpoint, and then we have our final checkpoint here. The last change for the hidden zones over here we actually took out this little hidden area back here. It just didn't really serve any purpose. And as I will go over in a little bit, um, with all the crystals that we had, it was not an actual need for us to do. So we went ahead and just took that out. And then come back through here, and that's the level done. Um, So that was for the mastery. Difficulty versus the reward, that played a lot into the way that the game or that forest zone was actually flowing. For here, it was basically a lot of the feedback was talking about, hey, the crystals throughout the level, there's just so many of them. It feels like a chore. A lot of them weren't necessarily worth it. We got crystals over here. We've got tons of crystals along here. I could actually count them really quick if we wanted to. There's 3 there, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. And I believe that's another 10 right there. So 31 crystals, give or take, just in this little section right here. The forest zone by itself before the adjustment was actually up to 97 crystals. Each zone now actually has 50 crystals. That was one of the changes that was made across the whole area is each of the actual level zones with the crystal have 50 crystals, and then inside this hub area, there are 30 crystals. That's it. So there's 180 collectible crystals. It's uniform across the whole project to kind of help alleviate that based off of some of the tester feedback that we got. So that was the big change for that one with that initial the crystal density. They said they felt like a chore. They were all over the place. Um, and again, yeah, there was a lot of adjustments that happened to the mastery zone just because of testers' issues with that as well. Color change for the platforms. This is a bit of a player-facing information update. So with this one, I have, let's go down here to the platforms. So initially, I should have the screenshot up actually. So initially, this video here will show you what it looked like. It was that the platform would grow, and it was green. That's the color that it would be once it starts to fade away. once they actually disappear. So if we resume it, that was never the intent. The intent was for them to pop out and be a color, whatever material it would be for the mesh to kind of like fit into the world. And after that, once it was time for it to actually disappear and go away, that's when it would shift to the green, yellow, and then to red, which is what we actually have in place now. I was able to get that working. Now, for the background music cutting in and out, probably already noticed, it was initially a problem with it cutting out due to some crumbling ice platforms that we had. That's cut content. This is an issue that has been carried over. It's been in the backlog. It was really low priority. Um, and so that issue got taken care of. It no longer does that. I did update it so that it would loop, and it was looping and it's working. But now the only thing that has changed that I can think of is alt tabbing in and out, back and forth, is doing something to actually cause it to stop, because it is no longer looping as quickly as it's supposed to be. And I don't know if that messes with the timer or not. But the music does loop. And there it is. There's that green to yellow to red. But that is all of the tasks that I worked on throughout here for this sprint. So thank you very much.
Hey, I'm Jonah, and this is my segment of the final build review. Here you can see the build that I have on Perforce, which I've downloaded, and then I have the extracted version right here. Let me go ahead and click play. Boot straight up into the game. And before I jump in, I'm going to pull up my sprint right here and go over my tasks that I had on Jira. So the first section was going to be my work on the volcano area. I felt like this sprint I was better about being able to keep the time down and work more efficiently. There were some areas, mainly this one right here, where there was a lot of repeated trial and error for how to change up and adjust the space according to feedback, but for the rest of it I felt pretty good. So through that I had improvements to the level start and end, which I'll show, path run throughs, a fix to the lava damage that has to do with the other thing that I worked on this sprint, and then just adjustments for all three of the areas, primarily the third area according to playtesting feedback, both done from within the class and playtests that I conducted separately in person, just to try and get more feedback on how to tweak things. And then after that, there was a lot that I did with the collectibles and the player death and respawn, as well as tweaking and adjusting the moving platforms, which I'll go over after. So first, I'm just going to go into the 3 area adjustments with side path improvements, start and golden path run-throughs, volcano damage, and all of that. So I'll go ahead and start here, skip past the starter window. A little pop-up here now showing the inputs and what they do. And you can already kind of see the collectible adjustments in place, the way that they kind of suck into the player. And I'll go over that with the Jira task later. Here we have the start zone and first area improvements that I did. So before, as I come through here, the line of sight was more confusing. Now the way it turns, it's more slanted inwards on this side, a little bit less interesting on the left, and it really draws the player's line of sight towards this top crystal. And then under that they can see the entrance to the final zone, the moving platforms connect to here, and as they walk out, they're naturally drawn to what's intended to be the main path, because before the player was drawn to what was supposed to be the more difficult side path. And then there's also the extra crystals you can get around here to the corner, hidden away. So that change was good, and then also using or reusing this already existing rock mesh just to make it match the space a little bit better, and then also have more sized platforms more in accordance to what I was looking for, with like the rounded edges, not as much surface to jump onto, because another part of the feedback that I was getting was that the first area was significantly less difficult than the rest of the game. So I'm going to go ahead here. I also tweaked the distances for the jumps. I made a gap right here so that you can see the other path about halfway through, so you can see you're still going the same way. And then we'll go up here, the next checkpoint. I tweaked with the moving platforms the timing. That was the main thing, but I'll go over the moving platforms more in just a moment. Go ahead, path across. And then we've reached the end of this first area. And then we have the second area, which I adjusted. I added more visual differences. Before it was just a lot of terrain. Now there's more of a separation. And then also the distance between the jumps. And then something to fill the space over here. So I just used like a fallen tower that uses the same model as the one in the center. I'm gonna go ahead and move past here. These platforms are pretty much all the same, except one of the other team members added a shake effect just to make it more clear what they're supposed to do. Go ahead and jump across here. And then we enter the final area that I've done the most on. So just to go back over to Jira, went over level start improvements, side path, first, second area, and now we're going over the third area and end improvements. And so I'll go over here, jump across. I did tweak the timing on some of these jumps. The first one was more difficult than the second, where I intended it to be the other way around. And then the main problem point was these moving platforms right here. Before, it had to do with issues with inconsistency with the way that I had made the platforms function before. And so by making them work more consistently, I was able to decrease some of the, what I guess I would call artificial difficulty. Oh, I just fell right there. So as you can see, the life was actually lost this time before with how our checkpoints worked. There were issues that made it so that you would instantly die, but like I jump right there and I take the lives go back down. And if I am to completely die here, then I'll go back to a temporary save point, which is the checkpoint system that I worked on that I will show right at the end here. But yeah, for this area, it was tweaking the distances, trying to maintain the difficulty while not making it too difficult was the main struggle. So there were a lot of different iterations with these platforms. Like in the original one, the first area is more difficult than the second, similar to what I was talking about before. So fixing that so that the difficulty feels like it's properly scaling up before the player then enters those moments of rest. Then this final area is pretty much the same. Once again, the distances were adjusted to make it easier to jump onto the platform. And then this area right here for the level end was redone to make it so that you would pick up this final crystal on your way to the teleport, because what people would do is they would either miss the crystal and jump off thinking they were finished and had to backtrack, or they would go to this crystal, miss a collectible, and then feel like they'd have to redo the entire level to get back. So I'll go ahead and interact here. As you can see the rest of the map from up here, give you a taste of like other areas if you haven't been there yet. And now that all of that is done, we go over into the more technical bug fixing side. So the volcano damage was fixed to actually deal damage to the player with a lava, now that I have been able to update the player respawn and death system. But first, collectibles grab range update. I was noticing in playtesting that people were running into the collectibles, but it wasn't quite picking up. And rather than just increasing the size so that the player was collecting crystals that it looks like they didn't even touch, I added this slight magnetic effect to suck the crystals into the player. And I was able to do this with a few bugs just in relation to how things were set up before, but after more testing and more bug fixes, I was able to get it working smoothly without any lag problems. So was good. And after that, I have the moving platform update. Before, I was having the platforms move from point A to point B within a set amount of time. And so what this made happen was platforms that would be moving long distances would move very fast, which was seen in like the final area. And then in that starting area where the platforms don't move as far, they were moving so slow that it wasn't a challenge. So having it scale based off of how far of a distance the platform is going, made it so that the platform speed is consistent. And then I also added an instance editable variable that scales the speed. That way it was able to be reused in the other areas more easily without being like situational or situation dependent. And so lastly, the biggest thing that I tackled, I don't think I did a good job of logging all the time I spent on it. I think there was extra, but it was tackling the player respawn and the death system. So before, there was an attempt at making a save load system, which was gutted and scrapped because we determined it was not necessary for the game. But as a result, with the way things were left, things that were supposed to damage the player were triggering a death condition, and everything, or a lot of things, were hard coded so that the player would end up having to restart the entire game if they died or if they hit the wrong object. And so what this involved was going through and cleaning up the code, simplifying the processes, and getting it all to work regardless of which obstacle, because different obstacles were doing it in different ways, so that they were all consistent and consistently triggering the damage events and the death and not resetting the player. And then the other change I did with that was to the checkpoints, giving another instance editable variable, which is a boolean, to make it so that certain checkpoints will serve as player death respawn points rather than just damage respawn points. So if I go up to here, for example, and I hit this checkpoint, and then just run to the lava a few times real quick here, you can see that after dying, I get teleported back here to this one. So they have these, I have these spread out, just kind of at important parts. So like right here, right there is one going into the second area, and then right as you're entering the third and final area. That way the players are able to more consistently complete the game, because before, people weren't completing any of the areas because they'd get far into it, they'd die, and then they wouldn't want to go through it all again, and they'd choose a different area. And then they wouldn't end up collecting any of the crystals, they wouldn't see the ending, and so it just didn't really make sense. So yeah, that's it for everything that I worked on for this sprint, and all the changes that were made compared to last sprint. Thank you for watching.
Hello, my name is Brandon Johnson, and I will be explaining the game that we have made. I am the Firefox group. So first I'm going to open up the level. Yes. And Beyond the Jump. And we are going to talk about what I have done, which is the Arctic level, which you'll see here. So, game starts in the hub here, and then the player can choose any direction they want to go. But my side is over here, where you'll see the Arctic level. As you see, you need to collect 5 gems in this level. So you make your way, and as you can see, if you fall, you will lose a life. There is a secret part up there where you can go to collect more of these purple orbs, but I'm just going to go through what we have. Next up, we have this maze-like structure. So if you hit these spikes, you will die and lose a life, but you have the snowball. So the snowball is able to destroy these objects, and then you can look around. There's gems inside of the snowballs, or not snowballs, there's gems inside of the icicles where you can use this to make your way around and destroy. As you see, it also gets bigger and bigger. So you can make your way using this. If you accidentally lose the snowball, like I have multiple snowballs, but if you accidentally lose it, let's say you drop it and you hit this one, there is a respawn button right there. use to make your way through. So what I've created, what I did for that will be for this sprint is we did have a problem with the icicles here and not being able to get to certain areas because of the hitbox. So to make it easier, we changed the hitbox a little to make it a little easier for the player, and then we also change the snowballs. So the I also changed the snowballs. So the snowball was supposed to just get destroyed every time it touched an icicle, but when it was doing that, it was also killing the player. So we just made it a little easier for the player to use a snowball, and as you can see, there's a little secret area here, but let me bring that back. Well, I see there's a bug. But basically, see, there's always still a bug no matter what. Make your way back. So that is one thing that we changed, and it was just making it easier to get the orbs that we needed. But you need to collect 5 of these. Here we go. And then just make my way around without dying. And then this is the last part here. You could use this snowball to get the last bit of these coins, or diamonds type crystals. There we go, that's the word. And then you can make your way, oops. You had to jump there. Then you could make your way over to the last part here. And once you collect all crystals, interact with the big one, teleport you back to the entrance where it shows that you have collected all 5, and then you can make your way over to the next level or next hub area. But this is the level that I created. It's ice Arctic level, snow. We got the water down below, the icicles that will hurt you, all that loveliness. Alright, so I will quit, and then we're gonna go over my Jira stuff. So first was the snowball adjustments I talked about, where it was killing the player eventually, and then it was also causing problems with getting destroyed and not respawning. So the snowballs now, they, like it show here, I changed the way they worked. So they don't get destroyed when hitting an ice spike. If the player loses the ball, they can easily bring it back to the respawn function. And then we're going to skip over, because these are all kind of in one. We're going to do the ice spike adjustment. Oh, and then you can see it took me about 2 hours to do that. I kind of did everything at once, not like separate. So it took this ice spike adjustment took me about 2 hours and 30 minutes. My work log, here it is. So this one, like I said, I adjusted the ice spikes to be larger than normal to make the maze like level, and I forgot to put it in here, but I also changed the hitbox as well. We changed the hitbox and we make them larger. We did also have to turn before we were getting lag, because when we started the game, it was turning the icicles. It was already destroying the icicles, which was causing lag, and it was doing all of them. So we also had to change the, I can't think of the word, but we also had to change something with the icicles, the way it destroyed itself. Next on here was like a mid-level adjustments. This also took about 2.5 hours. I think it's about the same. Yeah, so I fixed the middle section of the Arctic level, changed the positioning of the crystals, changed the landscape a little to match what I have, and make sure to the player can reach secret places around the level. So basically, I made sure that they can reach this third crystal, and made sure that the landscape fit that way. So it was a little hard for to get up there, so that's why I made it more rampy than jump. Next will be the full level adjustment. Basically, I don't have a workload on this because I kind of just worked on, but like I basically just worked on the full level when I was working on the mid level. Because after the mid level, I just kept working on the full level. Like I just did everything. The level landscape adjustments. This was all one big thing, and then all of these were inside. The description was just changing the ice bike so it was more like a maze and not something to jump over. Fixing the middle section, which I did, so there's a better way to get the middle crystal. Polishing the level up, full level adjustments, and then vitalizing it with the testing. Finalism testing. I did not add a word. Oh, everything in the works looks great. As you can see, there was another glitch going on with the last snowball at the secret part of the level. It was not supposed to do that. It did not do that, but it's what happens. So more stuff that we can work on. But it also took me. It says 5 hours, but it took me about 5 hours to get that done. But yeah, that is all the Jira assignments that I've done altogether. It took me about a day and 4 hours, and this one took me about. I did put it for 2 days. I believe it was going to take me that long, but it did not. It actually didn't take me that long. Had a good group able to help me out, and we were able to get things done. But that is all that I have. Thank you.
So for this sprint, I was focused on polishing up various code throughout the game. One of those being obviously the first thing here. This is what I was originally working on over here. Was to get the rolling mechanic switch to a falling mechanic and have the snowballs in the Arctic level fall rather than roll. But we decided to nix the snowballs as a rolling obstacle and turn them into just something the player could push around to destroy the spikes. So that's what we decided to turn it into with this. So the work that I put in on this kind of just got deleted, and we went to that. So that's the snowball. So the iterative play testing, I went through and play tested a couple hours throughout the week in the various builds. There were some issues that I was able to pick up on and take care of. Some of them being the menu option for the settings. The way they were originally done was two separate settings menus, one for the pause and one for the main menu. And so I switched up the coding to where there was only one settings menu populating for both the pause and the main. And that was, I just put in when the player clicked on the settings, it stored the name of the menu it was coming from, and depending on what the name was, the settings menu would return the player when they clicked on the back button, it would return them to that menu. So that was that. That was some of the implementing the fixes that I was able to work on. Level crystal collection was the bulk of my time. There was a issue with collecting them where only one was being collected despite all of the code I had put in to get all three of them collected, or each one collected. But each one was acting like it was named for the Arctic level, not for their own levels. And I couldn't find where the issue was, and for some reason I couldn't get my debug buttons to work. I would put in a debug system and then I'd press the button in the game and it wouldn't work. So that was frustrating and kind of took me the long way around. But I was finally able to figure it out, and each crystal now responds to its own level, the level that it's supposed to. And then there was the issue with the crystal overlap as well. That was that was kind of running into the same issue of where the smaller crystals here were still floating up there. And the way I handled that last time was I made it a blueprint in the original version. Was they were blueprints and they had a collision, and when the new crystal overlapped, they would disappear. But we were so close to the 1 gigabyte size limit, I did not want to add another blueprint in. So I was trying to figure out a way to do it without. And then I struggled to find a way, so finally I just deleted them from the game overall. So now when you go in to the game, these dead crystals are no longer there. We just have the floating levels. What happened here? Into the backlog for some reason. So then the platform wobble, that was me modifying the code for the platforms in order to shake once they get within a certain point of the falling functionality. So that was, I'd never done something like that before. So I just kind of was experimenting with the best way to do that, and I finally decided on a timeline that was only set for, I think, 0.2 seconds was its maximum, and in that 0.2 seconds it shakes 4 times. So, or it moves from 0 to 1 to -1 to 0 to 1 to -1. So it kind of shakes back and forth within that 0.2 seconds. Extra life functionality. Yeah, so this one was just changing all of the code for the extra life. We had originally had it at 100, and then we changed it to 50, and then we changed it to 20, and reduced the amount of crystals that we had in the world to collect. Part of our play testing was the advice that the level seemed too busy with all of the life crystals that we had in it. So we nixed some of those, and I went in and adjusted all the numbers to reflect the 20 and the functionality to make the functionality work at 20 to give the player the extra life. Collectible counter. Yeah, this was just when we originally changed it from 100 to 50. I forgot to change it to on the HUD itself. I changed the functionality, but forgot to change it on the HUD. So I went in and changed it to 50. and it only took a couple minutes because it was just in one spot. But then I we decided to change it to 20 anyway, so that was kind of a waste of time. This one was just me reworking the images for the intro cutscene for the backstory. I guess when I first done it, I misspelled some words. My grammar was off. My spelling was off. So I redid those. And the way I did them was I screenshotted, then loaded them in Microsoft Photos on my computer, and then put a text overlap on them, and then imported them into Unreal Engine, where I then used them for the as part of the main menu UI. The ice platform polish. This one was um, so the original plan was to get rid of the I guess my original plan. Forgot that was my original plan. My original plan was to put a respawning factor in on them, and so my original was I went in there to do that, and then we decided that we kept having issues with the geometry breaking. I was the only person that used geometry on my obstacles, the icicles, and the thin ice. Um, so it's not like it was a recurring feature in the game. So I didn't have a problem with nixing them, and they kept breaking for some reason at the start of the game. So we went in and or we decided that nixing the geometry clusters from the icicles and the thin ice platforms would be the best for them. So I replaced the geometry clusters with the original static meshes to stop that from happening. Then I asked everybody about switching out my original platforms for just the standard falling platforms instead. And so everybody was on board with that. So that's what I did. And I reworked some of the code to make the ones that are in the icicle level, turning the static mesh blue. And so that's where I went with that. And then the last one was the icicles. The first thing I wanted to do was for them to respawn. This was before we had decided on just them being for breaking being broken by the snowballs. There was parts where they would be jumped over, and when they were destroyed, they wouldn't respawn. So my original plan was to go in and add respawning situation to them. But we decided to obviously nix the geometry cluster. So we did that, and then I nixed the player destroying them. So now when the player hits them, they don't get destroyed. Only when the snowball does. So that's something that we changed, and then the collision for it was also changed. It was originally coded with a box collision, and it just seemed to kill the player too often. It killed the player when they didn't seem like they were overlapping. So I went in and changed the collision coding for that to make it seem to make it function when there was more overlap with the player character. So it looked more like the player was actually touching the spikes. And then gotta load the build from my Firefox games here. So 17 is our most recent build here. And let's see. So, and that's what I'll be showing off in the game is kind of that stuff. Desi's going to be showing the menus, so I won't show the menus, but I will show the crystal collection. And the cutscene was my baby during the projects. The cutscene, the win condition, getting all of that situated, making sure that all of the code functioned the for the player on the code. So, and since we are allowed to use debugs, I am going to do that because I am terrible at obstacle course games, so it takes me a really long time to go through this game. So I'm not gonna do that to anyone.